The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu. Welcome to the School Counselors Collaborative at the Center for Educational Media, College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University. We're so happy to have you here on site, and we're happy to have you online. We have 20 districts represented today, so thanks for being with us today. Our next session is with Ms. Mariska Judkins, and she is with the Coffee Counter Raider Academy. She was nominated because of her work in the Raider Academy. And so I'm eager to hear all about this, but again, a reminder to everybody, she's here because she was nominated, and she's talking on a topic that you asked for. So, Ms. Judkins, happy to have you here. So please take the floor.
All righty. I have to tell y'all, I feel so much pressure, because I was nominated, and then I'm like, well, I hope y'all hear something that you like or something that you can take back to your schools and implement in some way. This QR code, this is just to my virtual office. You're welcome to scan that. I don't know that I have that posted throughout the presentation, but I will reference some things that are linked from my virtual office if you want to give it a scan, just so you can have it as we go throughout. So, like she said, my name is Mariska Judkins. I'm the school counselor at the Coffee County Raider Academy. And today I'm excited to talk to you about just kind of what my process looks like for how I go through planning and implementing small groups at our school. And like I said, I hope you hear something that you like that you can take back and implement. Okay, just a little bit about me. So I graduated in 2019 with my bachelor's degree in psychology, and then in 2021 with my master's in school counseling. Thankfully, I felt very blessed because I was hired in my second semester of internship at the Raider Academy. So I have been there my whole time so far. And when I got hired, they were kind of like, we've had a lot of turnover with school counselors, and we really want you to come in and implement a school counseling program. So I was like, wow, okay, I'm excited and very nervous all at the same time. But super blessed. I have great admin, and so I'm super pumped. This is just a little picture of my family. So that's my husband, Tyler, my little boy, Tate. I am pregnant and due in February. So if I seem winded today, just know it's, I don't have all the lung capacity. It's not all mine right now. So this picture in the middle, this is just me with my purple door. I feel like I push this down students' throats. When I'm meeting with 8th graders before they come to our school, I tell them, look for my purple door. My door is always open for you. And typically, it is open, if I'm available. So as they're coming down the hall, I just try to condition them to look for my door. This picture here, this is just a little snapshot of me with one of our students during minute meetings at the beginning of the year. This is some data that I referenced, so I just wanted to give you a visual. So minute meetings happen the first week of school, and I go through health and PE classes, and I literally just meet with all students for a minute and ask them to rate how they feel about some questions, just to kind of give me an opportunity to be face-to-face with them and for them to just kind of say, oh, hey, you're not in trouble when you talk to me. So, and I literally call it, camp out with the school counselor. And with this, I'm able to meet with between 70 and 80% of our population through the first week of school. So it's very informative when it comes time to forming my small groups. So just some demographic information about our school. So we average around 430 to 450 students each year. We are 9th grade only at our school, so typically in our area we have 2 middle schools, and so we have a county and then a city middle school, and at the end of 8th grade they all funnel together and come to us for 9th grade, and then after us they go down the road to the central high school for 10th, 11th, and 12th. So we are a little different in that way. As of this year, we have one full-time volunteer behavioral health counselor. We have one district-wide social worker. And in our area, we have a school psychologist that's at our school 1 day a week, just to kind of paint the picture of what it looks like. So just to kind of share a little bit about what my responsibilities look like at our school, because I know, especially at the high school level, we can get bogged down with a whole bunch of different things. So this is kind of what my spread looks like. So I am the 504 coordinator at our school. So I'm in charge of, I have all the annual meetings for our students with 504s. I make sure all the teachers have their documents each year, and as we do the annual meetings, I go over and share the updated information with teachers. That's my responsibility. I'm also one of the Teen Health Advisory Council club advisors. This is a club that I really enjoy getting to be a part of. All of our club members are trained at the beginning of the year in the Sources of Strength Suicide Prevention Framework. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's super awesome. And then throughout the year, they are just implementing different activities and campaigns throughout the year to advocate those different areas of strength to our student body. So I enjoy getting to be a part of that. With 9th grade registration, after our course request form is finalized for our eighth graders, I deliver that information and the packets to our different 8th grades, and I go through a presentation with our county 8th graders and just kind of go over it with them and give them some information they need to know about what it will be like when they're at our school next year. And that's when I really start pushing my purple door. I'm also our McKinney-Vento liaison for our homeless population, and then I also implement my school counseling program. So I do one lesson each week for all students, what this kind of looks like. Every day, all of our students in the middle of the day, they either have homeroom and Reaching Raiders, and Reaching Raiders is homeroom, and then they have lunch. So like 11:50 to 12:20, they're either in lunch or Reaching Raiders, and then 12:20 to 12:50, they flip-flop. Whichever one they were just in, they're in the other. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, students have the opportunity to go to different classrooms of teachers that maybe they need extra help in. But then on Wednesdays, that is considered Freshman 411. And that's what I call my virtual and in-person platform. That's kind of like my slide up there at the top. But what this looks like, so I will record myself doing like an in-person lesson, and the Reaching Raiders teachers will play my video, and the students are prompted to do different things throughout my video. And then they do an exit ticket at the end, and that gives me my data of, okay, that's what they're walking away from this lesson with, you know. So all students interact with this on Wednesdays, and then the students that aren't watching the video, so I'm able to go into 2 different classrooms on Wednesdays. So those classrooms are not watching my video, I'm doing the same lesson but in person with them. So that's just kind of what my weekly lessons look like. I see students one-on-one as well, and that's just kind of on an as-needed basis and just kind of check-ins. From my minute meetings that I mentioned in the beginning, students will kind of let me know if they would like a check-in throughout the year, and if so, I call them in periodically. Typically, I stay pretty busy. I mean, they refer themselves to me. So I don't have any issue with that. And then with my small groups, I like to have a couple small groups going each semester. So I'm excited to tell you more about what that looks like. Okay, I like to share too a little bit more about like how my role is protected. I feel like my role is protected. I really love my admin. But so our assistant principal at our school, she is our testing coordinator, and she handles student scheduling, and she is also over attendance. So she handles all the attendance contracts, and then of course, like, she may refer students to me that she thinks needs extra support and whatnot. But she handles those tasks, and then we have a student registrar. She handles like all new student enrollment and student transcripts. She also helps some with attendance. And then our school psychologist handles behavior plans. So on our agenda today, my goal is just to kind of go through and just kind of walk you through what my process looks like for, you know, planning, forming, implementing, and advocating for my groups. And like I said, I just hope you hear something or take away something that you can implement at your schools. So when we're getting into the planning process, so we're going to look at a little closer of, you know, what does it look like to choose choosing the topic, deciding when and how long you want to run a group, finding the right curriculum, and then presenting all that to your administration. So when choosing a topic, I like to go through, these are some different areas of data that I like to reference. I like to reference these as, okay, this is the why. This is the why I'm doing this and why I want to do this. And I don't know about y'all, but when I was in my master's program, I feel like everyone was always talking about data, like reference the data. And I'm like, what data? Where is it? You know, like, where are we getting this? And as I've been here a little bit longer, I get it more now, but I like to send out like Google Forms and things like that to kind of accumulate some of my own data as well. So that's what I want to share with you a bunch too, because I feel like that helps kind of make it easier in deciding what you're wanting to do and why. So the faculty needs assessment, this is something I like to share with students, and like I said, through a Google form. And this is more in regard to my whole group lessons. So I use a self-awareness curriculum for my whole group lessons, but I don't have enough time throughout the year to go through all the topics. So I will share this needs assessment with our faculty and just kind of outline the different categories and the different topics, and I ask them, hey, pick the topics that you feel like our students need the most growth in or the most support in. And then that's really telling for me when I'm planning what lessons I'm going to cover, and also when I'm thinking about what group could be most beneficial. The student sign-up form, what I have found a lot, especially like at the high school level, any way that I can make it their idea, I'm going to have better attitudes and better buy-in with students when they're in my group, when they're in my room, period. And I'll share more with you about what that looks like. Also, my pre-assessment results. So at the beginning of semester 1 and semester 2 for my whole group lessons, I like to give students a pre-assessment just kind of to see what the baseline looks like of what they already know about the topics that I'm going to go through, to give me that baseline to see are we seeing any growth as we go throughout the different lessons. And that can be telling for small groups as well. And then my minute meeting results, I feel like this helps identify early on, you know, the students that have maybe a high amount of ACEs or just students that need that extra support. And I like to loop those students into group as well. Anytime I'm looking to form a group, I like to send out a faculty and teacher referral form. This can be really helpful in just kind of hearing from the teachers, first of all, when is it okay with you for me to be doing these groups? When is it least, disruptive to, you know, what y'all are doing in the classroom? And then I also like to reference like the failure list and students who are chronically absent. Like right now this year, I'm currently doing study skills, and I chose to do that semester 1 this year, where last year I did it in semester 2. And I enjoyed waiting until after that quarter 1, because the failure list was very helpful for me to reference, like, okay, these are students I'm gonna invite first. And then the chronically absent, obviously, I don't wanna have a group where I've invited like 5 chronically absent students, because the odds are they're not gonna be there, but some of them will. So it's just kind of all about how you spread them out. And I just wanted to kind of give you a visual of what each of these things looks like. I'm a visual person. So this is just kind of an example from the faculty needs assessment. So emotions, asking teachers to select what topics do you feel like our students need the most support with. And all this data is from last year. We have 18 Reaching Raters classes, homeroom classes, and so I sent this out to those teachers and I said, you know, select what topics you feel like our students need the most support in. So we had 66.7% of teachers select stress and anxiety. So I seem to always do like a stress and anxiety group, at least the past couple years. So this would be good information to beef up the why, you know, this is why I want to do it. Teachers feel like our students need this support. Another example with values. So 72% of teachers selected time management and priorities. Well, 66% was priorities for what they felt like our students needed growth in. So there's those topics are covered through study skills. So that would be a good way to beef up, you know, this is why they need the study skills support. With insights, 77.8% of our teachers selected responsibility. Again, responsibility is covered through study skills. So that could be really helpful for me to include if I'm trying to create an argument for study skills. Or any other groups you may be doing that, tie that in. My student sign-up form, I have this linked through my Google site, and every week in Freshman 411, I'm always telling students, especially in quarter one, I'm reminding them, hey, make sure you're checking out my Google site. If you're interested in joining a small group, check out my small group page and fill out my interest form, because at the end of quarter one, I'm going to be looking to start small groups. So I tell them and tell them and tell them about it so I can get as much student interest on the front end before I go to the process of actually starting to form the groups. And I just tell them, student groups include, this says 6 to 8, but it's really 8 to 10. 8 to 10 students, and take place during either health or PE classes or Reaching Raters classes once a week. And the goal of student groups are to bring students together that have similar interests, to participate in activities, to help them become stronger in that subject area. And this is just kind of an example of like what the spread looked like last year. So at the end of last year, I had 38 students that had responded to my student sign-up form. Out of those 38, 20 of them selected study skills, 17% lunch bunch, or not 17, just 17 out of 38 selected lunch bunch, and then 16 selected stress management. And I feel like that's really representative of, okay, what are they interested in? And last year, that's what I did. I ran lunch bunch, study skills, and stress management groups. So with minute meetings, so like I said, when I briefly meet with these students at the beginning of the year, I ask them several questions, just asking them to rate how they feel about some things on a scale of 1 to 5. So this question, how do you feel about yourself on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 would be awful, 5 would be awesome. So these students that rate themselves a 1 or even a 2, so you see 20 students rated themselves a 2, that would be a good population of students. Like, okay, hey, maybe they need some of that extra support. That would be a good group to try to loop into a group. So with my pre-assessment results, one question I ask, well, it's not a question, but a statement. So it says, I keep my classwork and homework organized. And they rate, again, 1 would be no, not at all. 5 would be yes, absolutely. So these students that rate themselves a 1 or a 2, 27 students rated themselves a 2. That would be very telling of a population that could benefit from some study skills. Another one, I know what study skills work best for me. This one's really telling. So the students that rate themselves a 1, no, not at all. 23 there, 37 that rate themselves a 2. Again, great students to loop in. And this is just kind of an example of the referral form like I send out to teachers. At the high school level, I feel like I'm really always trying to make sure I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, because with credits, I'm not trying to take away from the learning environment, but I also want to support these students where it's needed. So this was an example of the study skills form I sent out to teachers last year. Last year was the first time I did study skills, and I did it during our homeroom and lunch period. So I just kind of told teachers, hey, I'm looking to start a study skills small group this quarter that would take place during lunch and Reaching Raters on either Fridays or Mondays, depending on what would be best in regard to not disrupting credit recovery. I've looked at some failures from last quarter, and it seems the only way to offer this group to majority of them would be through lunch and Reaching Raters. And then I tell them the group would meet for 6 weeks, and I tell them these are the topics that we would cover. And then I ask them to select what their preference is. So my preference in when students participate in this group. And they either selected Mondays, Fridays, or I would prefer students to only participate during health and PE. Because like I said, before last year, I only would do groups during health and PE. But with the need for study skills last year, I wanted to try something different, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping on anybody's toes. And then I asked them, to refer any students that they feel like would benefit. So this was the response I got last year, and this really gave me the green light of, okay, we're doing it, it's fine. So I had 42.9%, so 14 out of 18 teachers, 42.9% of them selected Fridays, and then 57% selected Mondays, and nobody selected that they would only prefer students to participate during health and PE. So that was really telling to me of, okay, it's okay for me to take students out of credit recovery that one day. So that helped me in planning, this is another option that I could use. And then the students that they recommended, at the bottom here is just a little screenshot of an Excel sheet I create, and I just kind of copy and paste those students in there, kind of make little notes about them, like as I kind of briefly check in with them, or some of them I already know, they're frequent flyers. And that just helps too when it comes time to throwing these kids together. Next, deciding when and how long. So you've got to think about what's best for you. Is lunch in homeroom, is that a good time for you? Or is that a really busy time for you? Is there a certain day of the week that works better for you than others? Everybody is different. So thinking about what period, what time of day, how many groups can you see yourself running? And all that comes down to like your availability. Some high school counselors are not as available as others, and so you may not be able to run as many groups as someone else. But I always like to think in the back of my mind, anything is better than nothing. I like to plan for 1 to 2 weeks extra when it comes to groups, just to make sure I am having room in case we have to cancel or if we have weather or something. And then I like to utilize our school calendar just to kind of help give me a visual of mapping it out. This is just a visual I put in here. So last year, based on teacher referrals, I invited 45 students to group and 21 accepted. So I ended up splitting those 21 students into 2 groups of 10. And this is just kind of a visual of what I wanted to give you for like what mapping it out looks like for me. This is something I did this summer before this school year started, and I feel like this made all the difference for me to help me stick with what I'm trying to do throughout the school year. And I took our school calendar and I went ahead and wrote in all the things I have to do, all the things I want to do, different obligations that I already have. What else? I wrote in when my freshman 411 started, the week I was doing minute meetings, when I would be at a conference, when I wanted to plan for groups, when I wanted my groups to run, when our club meetings were going to meet. And this just kind of helped to give me a visual of, am I biting off more than I can chew, or is this going to work? And so that was really helpful for me. And I have already glanced at this a few times throughout the year, or throughout the year so far, throughout these different months to make sure I'm staying on track. And I like to reference, I like to give myself a couple weeks just in the prepping process. So for one, I'm not rushed, but also I've got time to meet with students a little bit if I want to on the front end, and also put in that time for the planning. And as I'm sure as you're noticing, the planning process takes the most time for me, but then it's worth it. And it pays off once a group gets going, because then you're not spending as much time, fighting kids for the buy-in, because you've already done all this on the front end. With finding curriculum, I really like Teachers Pay Teachers. I like to use material that outlines the ASCA standards. And when I first started with groups, I tried to create my own stuff, and then I was like, I do not have time. Like, what am I doing? I'm driving myself insane. And then I realized there are people that have already made things that are awesome. So I really like Teachers Pay Teachers. I have a couple creators that I will share with you that I really enjoy so far. So big thing, save time where you can, modify as you need to. Most group curriculum that I find is outlined for 6 weeks, but you may see that I don't have 6 weeks. Maybe you have 5 or maybe you have 4. And, with that you can modify as you need to make things fit where you need them. And then just finding something that you're comfortable with. With this, I will share probably my second year running groups. I had some curriculum that I thought I was going to love. It was from a creator I loved, but it was very like bare bones. And I found out real quick that I'm not a bare bones curriculum type of person. I got into that group and we finished early. I didn't have anything else. The students were so off topic, and I knew right then, I'm not going to keep using this. I'm going to find something else. So big thing, finding what you're comfortable with. And this is just a snapshot of some of those creators. So study skills and self-esteem, the curriculum I really like, I don't have that there, but it's linked at the end, but that's School Counseling Essentials from Teachers Pay Teachers. And then I really like Anxiety and Stress Management. That's SEL with Miss Carla. She is on Teachers Pay Teachers as well. And again, I was going to link my self-awareness curriculum that I use for my whole groups, but that is no longer on Teachers Pay Teachers. And I reached out to them, and they didn't reach out back, so I don't know about that. And then this is just kind of a snapshot of, okay, now you've looked at some data, you've created your why, and you're having the conversation with your admin. So you're saying, hey, this is what I have found, this is what teachers are saying, this is what students are interested in, this is where the need is, and this is what I want to do. And so this would be a document that you just share every week. I share this every Monday and every Friday with all of our staff, just so they know, hey, reminder, don't forget, and also a reminder to them of, I'm being a school counselor, like I'm doing things. Please don't assume I'm just sitting in my office doing nothing. So I tell them, the following students will be participating in the study skills small group during first and second reaching raters on either Monday or Friday, depending on which group they are in. Each group will meet once a week from the week of, this was 127 to 37. And students have been instructed to get their lunch after fourth period and then come straight to my room. So just kind of sharing, this is what the rundown would look like, and then I would copy and paste my students in for each group. And then I just kind of included a message to teachers there at the bottom so they know I was referencing, everything they shared, and I appreciate them sharing their credit recovery time with me in order to make small groups possible. And I don't have to fight a lot, or I don't mean the word fight, I don't have to push a lot with my admin because they do a lot on the front end to also help protect my time. But if you're someone that this wouldn't be enough and you would need to include more of that why behind it, you could copy and paste the data from the different areas to go over, this is why I want to do it, and you could also have that in addition to this when you're going over it with them. This is just another example of what a visual could look like. When I do stress management, I try to do that through health and PE classes. So last year, or I think this is from 2022, so I did Thursdays during third period. So all of the teachers that have health or PE on Thursdays, third period, if I have one of their students, I put their students in there, and then again, this is something I share with them, with everyone, every Thursday, so they know, hey, this is where these students will be, and this is what we're doing. So that was everything for planning groups, and now we're going to move in a little bit to what the forming process looks like. So big things we're going to touch in on: prioritizing the group dynamic, and then just the different ways to go about inviting students. So with prioritizing the group dynamic, this is just kind of a snapshot of what my group area looks like in my classroom. So my goal is always to create that comfortable environment. So I try to have the low lit lighting, the circle design. Mine's always a square because I only have square desk. And then on the TV, I always try to have something relaxing, whether it's a fire or a seascape, whatever it is. And I always have students create nameplates. They always put them up every time because I feel like that helps them be more comfortable, with other students in there that they don't know. And then I always kind of like to briefly meet with students before I invite them, in case I'm not familiar with them, to give me that first impression of how would you do in a group dynamic? What would you bring to that group? And that's very insightful for me, just to kind of determine who would work well together. And that can look like different things. And this could also change depending on how much time you have, right? Some students, if I've never seen them before, I might make that extra effort to call them directly into my office to go through a check-in with them and then be like, hey, I'm about to start this small group. Are you interested? This is what it would look like. We would come in here. But sometimes I'm crunched for time. And if I'm crunched for time, sometimes this looks more like, okay, we're in fourth period. I need so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. They're in these classes, and I just kind of walk around and just pull them out of that class briefly and tell them, hey, I'm getting ready to do this group. You were either recommended or, I saw you signed up. Are you still interested? Whatever the conversation is, but I just mention it back and ask them if they still want to participate or if they want to participate. And I have found too, I feel like the more you can keep it casual, the more casual they feel coming in there. Sometimes when I'm calling students in directly to meet with them one-on-one to invite them, they feel pressure in some way. So you've got to do what works best for you and what works best for your population. So being intentional is something I also try to consider when forming the different groups. So I like to consider who signed up. I like to have a good combination of people that signed up, students that were referred, the different ACEs that they bring to the table, and just the different personalities too. So I know how am I going to find the most success with the students I'm throwing together. This is just another example from my minute meeting results. So I asked students, you know, do you have an adult at home that you can talk to if you're ever having a hard time? And those students that said no, those could be a good population of students to pull into a group if you're needing students. I did this last year when I was looking at my third period group, and I had the students that wanted to join, and then I had some students that were recommended, and then I still had all these rosters of students I didn't know, and I needed some more. So I did go to this and I looked at who answered no. There were 10 students, and one of those was in that third period health or PE class, and I looped them in, and they really enjoyed it, and they were a great asset. And then I felt good knowing, you know, I'm being intentional, I'm pulling in students that need it. Okay, so I try to make it their idea, like I've already said, as much as I can. So I do that through my student group interest form. I push that through my Google site. I try to find the data, make it as casual as possible. Another way I found when it comes to inviting students to group, so with our health and PE classes, our PE classes specifically on Fridays, they have what they call free Fridays. So in the gym, they are all just kind of hanging out doing their thing. And so with this was another time where I was running low on time, and I really just needed to see who wants to do it because I've got to start quick because I'm about to run out of time. And so one time I just went into the gym on a free Friday, and I had my list of students I knew I wanted to invite, and I just kind of walked around to them and said, hey, you know, I'm Miss Judkins, I'm the school counselor. This is a group I'm wanting to start next week. I feel like you would be great. Would you want to participate? And I had the best feedback with that, and I thought they would feel, you know, like I'm intruding on them or something, but no, it was very casual, and they all came to group with great attitudes. And I don't know if it's because of how I started out that process, but that is something I noticed that I had done different that made an impact, I felt. And then with getting the parent consents, so typically after I invite students to group, I've kind of finalized my rosters. I know who I'm going to be pulling each time. Then I just kind of like to pull up that roster and make some calls home to parents and just say, hey, you know, this is Marissa Judkins. I'm the school counselor at the Coffee County Raider Academy. Next week I'm getting ready to start a study skills small group, and I have invited your student, and they let me know that they were interested, and I just wanted to let you know that they would be participating, but if you have any questions or concerns, you know, please let me know. And typically, the parents were like, oh, great, I'm so glad you're doing that. Thank you for letting me know. And then some parents would have some questions, and that's fine too. But that way, and then I just document that I have made all of those contacts. So I have that for once we get started and all the things. So this is just a snapshot of my virtual office. And through here, students can contact me. I always tell students every week in Freshman 4112, you know, any email that I send you, this is linked at the bottom of my email. You could always access this to get to Freshman 411. Above the couch, I have the different flyers for the different groups that I have curriculum on, and they can click on the blue interested in joining a small group, and that takes them directly to my page. And then on the couch, I have the iPad, and if they click on that, that takes them directly to my need to see the school counselor form. A lot of students some students feel more comfortable doing that than just emailing me directly. So just putting the options out there. But again, trying to make it as casual as possible, trying to make it their idea. And this is just a snapshot from my Google site, from the small groups page. So at the top, it just says, if you're interested in joining a small group, please fill out this interest form at the bottom of this page. And on Canva, I love Canva. To create different things. If I want anything to be visually pleasing, I go to Canva. But so I created a flyer for my stress management group, and I just kind of give students the basic information that I think they might want to know. So, you know, 6 to 8 students, really it's 8 to 10, I need to update that. But 8 to 10 students, you know, we would meet once a week during school, and I asked them, you know, are you interested in learning more about stress relieving activities? And then I just tell them to email me with any questions. And then I do the same thing like with study skills. I give them, you know, some of that basic information. With Lunch Bunch and self-esteem. Something about Lunch Bunch too, I want to mention this. Sometimes I feel like I really enjoy Lunch Bunch, and I haven't made this like measurable yet, so I don't push it a whole bunch. But my students love Lunch Bunch. And if you ever feel like maybe you're afraid to start groups, or you just don't really know where to start, I do highly recommend starting with a lunch bunch just to kind of get your feet wet. But so typically, like semester 1 right now, I have 2 lunch bunches going because they're very low prep. It's very casual. The students come in, and with lunch bunch, I go from the student referral form, and I pull those students that want to participate, and then I'm also taking referrals of, okay, teachers or lunch monitors, who do you see sitting alone in the cafeteria that maybe looks like they need some support? I also look at, okay, who just enrolled, students that may not have as many friends. I loop those students into, and they really love it, and we just do get to know you games. And I just tell them, eating lunch outside of the cafeteria with a small group, and our goal is building relationships in a safe space. Just another example of some data that you could use of when you're looking for those students to pull into group. So this is again from the minute meetings data from the beginning of the year. So how would you rate your friendships on a scale of 1 to 5? Okay, 1 would be awful, 5 would be awesome. So those students that rate their friendships a 1 or even a 2, those would be good students that could use that extra support. And then how do you feel about your family? So 1 would be awful, 5 would be awesome. So the students that rate their family a 1 or a 2, those would also be great students to loop in. And then this is just a snapshot of like what my entire form looks like. So this is at the bottom of my Google site on my small groups page, and I just asked them to put in their first name, last name, and then I just asked them to select what group topics they would be interested in learning more about. And then I just have all the topics there that I have curriculum on. And I will say, like, I have not done a self-esteem group in a couple years, and because stress management has been so prevalent. But it was probably like my second year, self-esteem I had the most interest in. So I found that really interesting too, just to kind of see how it fluctuates. Now, transitioning into implementing. So now we've spent the time planning on the front end. We have gone through the process of what inviting students have looked like. You have invited students, you have your rosters, you've called parents, now you're ready to do it, okay? So big things I like to remember, communicate with everybody. And I used to be afraid of, well, I don't want to, spam people's emails by communicating too much, but I have learned a lot of people, if it doesn't apply to them, they just kind of, they don't look at it anyway. But I would rather overly communicate so people know what I'm doing, especially in a big school where there's a lot going on. So they remember that you're there and that you are serving a purpose. I put a lot of emphasis on the first group. We'll talk more about the importance of just protecting that group dynamic and the emphasis on the last group, making sure you're ending with that happy closure. So in communicating, like I've already mentioned, I try to share my rosters and procedures weekly. I email that out to all CCRA every day that I'm having a group, so they know, okay, these are the students that will not be in my class because they'll be with Ms. Judkins. I send it out to admin, office staff, teachers, lunch monitors, the nurse. I used to not always include everybody. And this year, for example, one of the students I pulled in is a diabetic. And they monitor like what snacks she takes in. And I like to give them snacks when they're in there. And so the nurse had reached out to me and said, hey, this student can only have certain things. And I was like, well, I'm so glad I included you on this because I don't know that I would have done that initially. So that can be really helpful. And then I always remind students too, the biggest annoyance is like if people are forgetting and then you're having to hunt them down. But I remind students every time we're going to meet too, so I put it on the morning announcements. I don't put their names, but like for our Monday study skills group, I'll put on there, this is a reminder for students in the Monday study skills group. Reminder, group meets today during first and second reaching raters. Check your email for details. And then I send out an email to all those students that I'm seeing that day. And typically, like the first group, they typically forget, but after that, they remember. And so I do feel like this is helpful. And some of the students in my lunch bunch, they'll come in, like this week they came in, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad you didn't forget. And they were like, how could we forget? You put it on announcements and you sent an email. I was like, I did that. And again, just sharing out these rosters every week, every day that you have a group going on. So with the first group, I like to go over, what the weekly expectation is. First group, you're laying that groundwork, and I feel like this makes a big difference in how the rest of your groups go, to let students know what it's going to look like when they come back. So we go over the weekly expectation. I tell students, when you come in, with study skills, they're eating lunch in my room too. So I tell them, you come in, set your stuff down wherever you want to sit around the table. I have an anonymous mental health check-in board where they just draw something to represent how they're feeling that day on a scale of 1 to 5. So I tell them, check in on the mental health check-in board, grab you a snack if you want one. And then the first day, we always create ground rules. This can sometimes be awkward because they're always like, what do you mean ground rules? But I feel like that really does set the stage of, this is not class, we're not having English homework, things like that. We're a group and we want everyone in here to be comfortable. And that's what I tell them. What would it take? What would you want to know about this room, this group of people in order to feel comfortable to share when you come in here? This year, a lot of them have come up with, don't discuss sensitive topics, and they wanted to come up with a safe word. And I was like, okay, cool. And I typically prompt them with, well, what about, confidentiality? Do y'all want to have a rule of, what we say in here stays in here? Not that we can enforce that, but I feel like if we say that, it encourages them of, okay, I'm not going to talk about other people's business outside of here. I always do an icebreaker activity. Sometimes it makes me run out of time, and then I am grabbing at straws trying to be able to fit everything in. But even if it's going to make me run short on time, I always do an icebreaker because I feel like it just really makes all the difference in getting students comfortable and getting them to talk. I have this beach ball. It has 1 million get to know you questions on it, and they love it. And I'll tell you, I had 70 questions that I wrote on here at first thinking, oh, that's going to fill that thing up. It didn't. I had to look up so many more. One of the questions on here is, would you rather find a folded chip in the chip bag or a pencil with a really nice eraser? And I was like, I have never heard that. That is so random, but I love it. So some of them are just so random like that. But they toss it around. I tell them, okay, you say the person's name before you throw the ball to them. And, when you catch it, you answer whatever question your left thumb lands on. And we always do a round of that or something else before we get into whatever our material is for that day. I always make folders with whatever the material is that we're going to use each week. And at the end of our group, they get to take their folders with them. I like that because to me, it makes it feel like, okay, this is what we've done and now you're taking it with you. Even if you go put it in the garbage, we still did all this together. I share the schedule with them in our first group because I really want them to buy into, this is a group and we're committing this time to each other and it's really important for you to be here, every time we have group, even though it's not mandatory. I just really try to include that of, we want you to be here. And I let them know these are the things we're going to be getting into. I always do a pre-test. This is super important because this is where that baseline data is going to come from that you are going to be advocating with at the end. And I will say with my study skills group material, I'm using this semester. Like last semester, I didn't love the pre-test that came with it. I wanted it to be more of that 1 to 5 rating scale so I could see more of that growth at the end. And so I kind of created my own based on the different topics we're going to cover. And we will see at the end of this whether or not that works better for me. But that's super important because that gives that baseline. And then I always try to provide incentives. So with my stress management group, we do fun things in there, like there's painting and different hands-on activities. So I don't get them really nice snacks for stress management. I'll give them a Jolly Rancher or a piece of candy at the end. But with study skills, that's more of, I'm taking them from lunch. They're not hanging out with their friends that day. So I do get them snack crackers and things like that to have as a snack when they come to group on those days, just to try to boost up that incentive. In protecting the group dynamic, so this is so important, and you all may already know all this, but I just have to share my experience with members. I do not add any members to a group after the second session, and sometimes not after the first, because it just changes everything. One year I was doing a self-esteem group, and I had invited all these students. I had them on my roster. We all met the first day, and a couple of them weren't there that day. So the next week I looped them in. I was like, hey, you weren't here last week. Feel free to come in if you want to. And the attitudes they brought to group, it was like a black wave over group. People weren't sharing. They just didn't feel comfortable. I don't know if it was the students or just the fact that, we had set that baseline, the first group, and then it changed. But I try to be aware of what is the group dynamic like, and I don't add people after the fact. This year I did. I had some students that weren't there the first group, and I did let them come the second group. But I kind of analyzed their demeanor and everything too, and I could tell they'll be okay. And that has been fine. But sometimes you're just using your professional judgment. And just remembering the environment is key. Always having that round table design in any way that you can. And then trusting the process of group, but also always planning ahead. And I say that because sometimes I go through a group and I get through a session and I'm like, man, I don't know that they walked away with anything that I wanted them to, that group. But then I get to the end and those students are, their ratings are great, like they have growth, and they share that they really enjoyed it. So I'm like, okay, maybe I just, sometimes I have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable when they're learning. And I say plan ahead. With my study skills group in particular, that's fresh on my mind because I did that semester 2 last year. I'm doing it now. In session 5, they were prompted to read different articles. And I knew that was kind of pushing it because they don't want to come in there and have to do a bunch of work, right? But they did the activity, and then the next week they were prompted to read a story or something and apply some different reading strategies. And I just kind of knew from my group, I was like, I don't know that they're going to like that. So, but I planned ahead. So I was like, okay, how could I modify that to make it a little more fun? And so I used one of my son's children's books, and I brought it in and I read it aloud to them. And then we just paused and we would have discussion over, okay, which reading strategy did we just see, or whatever it was. So yes, trusting the process, trusting the material, but also planning ahead, because if you're uncomfortable or if they feel like you're caught off guard, they're not going to be comfortable either, and you don't want that. And then the last group, so this is where I really try to hit on that happy closure. I tell them if you want to bring snacks, you can. This will kind of be like our party day, but we're still doing our curriculum, whatever our activity is that day. And I let them take their folders at the end. We kind of recap, everything we'd covered so far in those 6 weeks. And I always do the post-test so I can measure, what did they take from group? Did they grow? And then I always like to do this survey too. I didn't always do this survey, but I will tell you, the feedback I get from this survey gives me the motivation to do groups again. And I feel like it's also it just gives you the warm and fuzzy feeling sometimes. And it helps you better plan for the next year. Like, okay, they really didn't like this. That's great to know. So I might do that differently next time. So I just asked them anonymously, what is one thing you liked about group? What is something you disliked about group? What is something you would change to make this group better? And would you recommend this group to a friend? And then when it comes time for advocating, so now you've ran your group, you've collected all your data, so you've got all this stuff, and now it's like, what do you do with it? So this is where I'm looking at my pre-post test, and typically my students do this on paper, and then I enter it into a Google form to give me the bar graph or the pie chart, whatever it is I'm looking for, to make it visually pleasing. I go over the student survey responses. I make the data as visually pleasing as I can. I look for those areas of growth, and then I also use all this at my end of the year meeting with my admin, as the conversation of, hey, this went really great, I want to do it again, or hey, this didn't go well, this was an issue I had, can you help me not run into this next year? And just some examples of this. So this was, and like I said, I use Canva, and I put all the student responses into a Google form to give me the visuals, and I copy and paste that into my Canva document. I send out a quarterly newsletter to our faculty, and whatever group I have that ran that quarter, I put the data in there for all of them to see. But this shows the baseline of understanding before and after group. And you'll see, like with my anxiety and stress management, there was growth. The first one, I can identify at least 3 of my anxiety triggers. So 62.5 of them said yes in the pretest, and then in the post-test it was 87.5. And I'll say sometimes your data isn't going to be helpful, and if so, I encourage you to just not use questions that they didn't have great growth, because that's not helping you meet your goal. But it is helping you to learn from, okay, maybe I didn't do as well on that topic, or we needed to do more and I can do more next time. So I always try to make sure I'm making everything easy to read, and I share everything, I overshare things. So I document the student survey responses and use it, when I'm advertising for next year, when I'm advertising to my admin or trying to plan. So this was just from my newsletter from Lunch Bunch. I'm telling everybody, I had 10 students participate in Lunch Bunch. These are some things that they said. What was one thing you liked about group? They shared socializing, getting to know new people. It's small and fun. I eat during lunch and getting to talk. And then I shared all their responses of how they would recommend it to a friend. And then I just wanted to share a few of the survey responses just because I feel like it can be so encouraging to us just as we are planning and going through the process, especially when you have a million other things you're having to do. Sometimes taking the time to form and run a small group doesn't feel doable. And sometimes this feedback that you get helps and it encourages you. So something they liked about group and study skills, talking about stuff that's important and talking to new people. There's no judgment and it actually helps. Learning how to memorize and remember certain things, how caring everyone is. Something you disliked about group and study skills, it's on a Monday, how I was the only boy. And this is something, obviously you don't plan for this to happen, but when people are absent or if people drop out, sometimes like with this group, I did end up having one boy that came consistently to study skills. And he did great, but I'm sure, yes, he didn't enjoy being the only boy. But that wasn't the plan. Something that would make group better. So a different day and different form of communicating, more group activities besides answering questions. And sometimes that falls back to, I have them and they're eating lunch and they're in there for the homeroom period, but to get through all of our material, I didn't always have time to make things super hands-on. Sometimes it is, hey, we're getting to the nitty-gritty, focus in with me. We took time for the icebreaker, but now I need you to focus. But that's good to know. This is just from my anxiety and stress management group data. So what growth have you seen in yourself since starting this group 7 weeks ago? It wasn't 7 weeks. Some of that was really helpful. I'm more confident in having feelings. I know coping techniques and I practice self-care. My coping strategies for when I'm stressed have become better and have worked more effectively. And then going off of the stress management survey, so things they shared that they liked about group. Everyone is very open to one another. We can talk and not feel judged. Things they disliked, they didn't like missing gym. And it can be a lot in one day. And then how late it is in the week. What's one thing that would make group better? So maybe a little more talking, doing more stuff with members in the group, louder music. Oh, music, that's what I forgot. I do play a clean playlist. And they love that. They love music being on, even though it drives me crazy because I'm like, my brain cannot multitask. I'm trying to talk and there's music, but they love it. So we do that. And then someone said coping methods, and I included this because when I read that, I was like, are you kidding me? I'm about to beat my head into this wall. The whole thing was about coping methods. And that just goes to show, they're not always picking up what you're putting down, and that's okay. And really, with this group, toward the middle of the group, I didn't know if they were all picking up what I was putting down. And I kind of did this in the middle. I did this survey in the middle of the group, and I got that I got that feedback. And so every group after that, I was like, okay, we would recap the coping methods that we talked about to make sure, hopefully, that they were taking away the different things to utilize. And again, like I said, I send out a quarterly newsletter with all this information. I want my faculty to know, hey, this is what I'm doing and it's working, and this also helps me. And maybe you don't send out a newsletter. Maybe you share little tidbits at in-service or professional developments or at the end of the year meeting with your admin. And I just had some of this specific just to share just in case you're interested. But so Study skills. I know specifically what I spend too much time on each day. Pre-test, that was 41%. Post-test, 58%. Rated themselves a 5. Where else is some good? And some of it's not that great. Like this one, the pre-test was 33% and it grew to 41%. So not the best growth. I may not include that in my newsletter. And I already shared that one. These are just from my stress management, so the areas of growth. This one was pretty good. I can identify at least 3 healthy coping skills to use when I'm feeling overwhelmed. So the pre-test, 37.5% said yes. Post-test, 75% of them said yes. The last time I felt anxious, I remembered to use a healthy self-calming technique. Pre-test was 37.5% and post-test was 87.5%. So then big thing at the end of the year meeting with your admin, you're sharing, hey, this is what worked, this is what I want to change or improve next year. When I have this meeting with my admin, I like to already have like my proposed plan for the next year so I can say, this is what I would like to do and this is where I need help. Whether it's protecting your time in this way during this class period or whatever the need is. But when you have that plan, we always have this meeting in the summer, like after the last day of school, when we come back that week. I work 5 extra days. But I feel like that's really helpful too because I'm coming at them with a plan. I'm saying, hey, this is what worked. Here's my data. This is where I need help. And I think it helps kind of create that argument of, okay, let's work with this. Okay, and then these are just the resource links I mentioned, but you all have access to this. But yeah, so I feel like that was a lot of information. So any questions?
How do you address if someone does break confidentiality from the group? Because you mentioned we can't really enforce that. Mm-hmm. Are they then invited not to return? How do you handle that?
So I try to make that as personable of an experience as possible. And I tell the students throughout, if anything comes up, if anything happens in group that makes you feel uncomfortable, let me know. So before, when that has happened, a student will tell me, hey, this happened. And if it's with a certain group member, I will call that group member in, one-on-one and be like, hey, this happened the other day. You made this comment. I don't think you meant it this way, but I just want you to be aware that this is how someone took it. And then we just kind of go through that a little bit together and how to avoid making that comment next time or whatnot. And then if it continues, then the next conversation we might be, I don't know, like if you're enjoying group as much as maybe the others are, and I just want you to know it's totally optional. You don't have to stay. And, it may turn into more of a, you can leave, but typically it doesn't. Typically people don't mean to be offensive or whatnot. But sometimes there's drama, and that's why I do not get people in their best buddies in group, because when they fight and they're not friends anymore, then they both leave. And then I'm like, I invited you and now I'm losing you. But so typically that's what that looks like.
Just want to just say thank you for the idea of taking my traditional pencil paper post-test, pre-test, post-test to the next level of data for my data team meetings at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I used to not always do that either. But then I found myself with I had this binder at the end of the year with, the survey and the pre-test, post-test, and I'm like, I see the growth, but how do I communicate this? And it was just confusing. And you want to be able to reference it, year to year. So you've got to figure out what's the best way for you to make that happen. So.
This is more of a school-wide question than it is for your small groups. Mm-hmm. But could you talk a little bit about your teen mental health first aid classes that you provide and how that changes the atmosphere and the culture in your school?
Oh, that's a good point, yes. And I didn't even really mention teen mental health first aid. So at the beginning of the year, all of our students participated in the teen mental health first aid training. So all students participated through history classes, and the goal of this training was to put everybody on the same page of, this is how we react to, this is what a crisis situation looks like, these are the supportive adults you need to get in contact with if you're feeling concerned about yourself or a friend. And the big thing is the 5-step action plan of what to do when you're worried about yourself or a friend having mental health concerns. And all students participate in that through history classes. It is 6 sessions, so we did, what did we do? Tuesday, Thursday? So we did Tuesday, Thursday for 3 weeks. And I feel like that really set the stage. We did that in September. And so then they all knew what the expectation was. If you have a friend, that is cutting, or if you have a friend that's making comments about hopelessness or not wanting to be here, you need to tell a helpful adult. And we go over the helpful adults at school, helpful adults outside of school. And then I do feel like that has really made a big impact, because we have had some students, they've told their parents when they're concerned, and then parents call us, and then we make the appropriate check-ins as needed, with those students throughout the day. And I feel like it just kind of sets the stage of, this is where we are, okay? We're all on the same page, all of you matter. This is what we're doing, so.
Is that referencing the THAC that you mentioned on one of your first slides?
It's not. That's
So would
different.
you talk more about that, the THAC?
Yeah, so the Teen Health Advisory Council, and also have, so Miss Lacey Cody, she's here, and she's one of the Teen Health Advisory Council advisors at our Central High School. But this branched from, I don't know if y'all are familiar, but so Tanya Garner, she does in our district the county-wide health advisory council, and she wanted us to bring it into the schools. So it started with, we were just starting the Teen Health Advisory Council, and they were just doing different activities throughout the year just to promote healthy living, basically. They would, like our first year, our group did something about proper brushing, like around Dental Health Awareness Month. And they did some physical activity things. They do some things around mental health. And that's kind of how it started. And then we were introduced to the Sources of Strength Suicide Prevention Framework. And so every year those people come in and they train any new advisors that we have, and they train our students on that model. And so we've started using that model to more so implement what activities and campaigns they're doing throughout the year. So it just kind of made it a little more structured. Did that answer the question? Okay. I kind of ramble, and my brain has a lot of things going on up there, so you got to pull me back in sometimes. But
To the group, from what you've heard Marissa say, what are some ideas you're ready to take back? What are some new ideas you're ready to start? If not Monday, maybe in January when we start a new semester.
I liked like your minute meetings, how you had that little fire in the camp chairs, because I feel like it just makes it a little bit different, and they might be more readily available to come out there and be more open versus just sitting like a desk out there and being like, okay, we have 1 minute to talk. Like, it's more of a open conversation. I liked that.
Thank you.
I loved your data presentation, like another person said. I would love to start incorporating that. We're having a big issue, well, I'm sure everyone does with middle schoolers, with apathy. Kind of crippling apathy is what's happening right now. And so I think, like you said, make it their idea. And so, through the feedback forms of what do you want to see? They're the minority of our student body too. I'm at a pre-K through 8 building, so it's only, 6, 7, 8 that are truly in the middle school, and this is where I think this would directly apply. So thank you for those data collection ideas, because I think that could be a way for us to really connect with them on a deeper level.
And another thing just about the data collection too, like I know I've mentioned I have great admin and I'm so blessed, but the fear is always in the back of my mind, what's going to happen to me when they're not here, I'm always worried about, am I doing enough so that if my admin changes, am I going to be able to advocate for my role enough to say, well, this is what I've been doing and it works, so, please don't make me be testing coordinator or make me be overscheduling. And so like with my newsletters, I print them off at the end of each quarter and I put them in a binder. So, it's helpful for me to look over, but then I hope that will also help me if I'm ever in the position of having to fight to not take on an extra responsibility that would take away from what I'm able to do.
That dynamic was a big topic of conversation yesterday in our administrator sessions, where the presenters were urging them not to ask school counselors to take on responsibilities that are not part of your role. So go take a look at those videos in your free time to see how we were framing that.
Yeah.
some more ideas, which not only is helpful to each other, but helpful to Marissa for feedback on this presentation.
I don't really have an idea. I loved the beach ball icebreaker. I'm a huge believer in an icebreaker can really like take people's walls down. And I love that you had all of those just random things. And then wherever your left thumb lands, that's the question you're going to answer. I love that because I think that gets people talking and gets people thinking. And if you give me the icebreaker of, do I want the folded chip or what was, I mean,
the pencil with the good eraser.
Pencil with the good eraser. Like, I'm gonna give you an answer, but I'm gonna think about, was that the right answer all day long, probably. So yeah, I love that.
And with that too, I'll share. So like I had a group, my Friday group met yesterday because I'm here today. And I had a student that came to me at the beginning of group and she was like, you know, I don't really feel comfortable sharing. Is it okay if I just don't share at all today? And I told her, I was like, I mean, I want you to be comfortable, but I want everyone else to feel comfortable too. And I am afraid that if you don't share at all, that it might make people feel like they're being judged or, you know, that you're not wanting to be there. And it could, you know, just change how other people feel. So, and I did tell her, you can pass some, but I would like for you to try to share at times when you feel comfortable. And then it was someone said something with the beach ball, like one of their questions, something they said, I could tell like she just felt comfortable after that. And she ended up sharing throughout the group when she had told me originally she didn't want to share. And I was like, that was cool. So.
And I think to understand that things that you may believe may be unimportant to everyone else may be of interest to others and may be actually relevant to other people. So Marissa, this was jam-packed. I want to be at Raider Academy. I want my kids and grandkids to be there because this is sounds like a healthy, happy place to be. And I think you're a significant reason for it. Well, so I see why you were nominated.
Yeah.
So well, thank you for being here and best wishes for great health in the coming months.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.